Last minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning ride is okay with
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Nice
as simple
ride.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm gonna get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
Well, hello there, listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host. If you're watching on YouTube, it's Wonder Woman. Happy Halloween! But for those of you who are probably listening after Halloween, I hope that you can have a moment to remember some silly fun and a joyful moment that you had on your Halloween. Okay, but I'm your host. I'm actually Darlene Marshall. I'm a wellness coach and well-being expert who also happens to love me some Wonder Woman. But real talk, is this a moment in your life that you could use some fun? Because hearing it out there in the ether, it seems like people really need to have some fun right now. It's been a tense moment. There is a lot going on. And I'll be honest, we're recording this one a little bit early this year. I'm actually in Houston volunteering with some very fun people. So it's very possible that since we are recording this episode, there is some crazy stuff going on that's even more crazy than the stuff that's going on right now. That makes me think that stuff will be crazy when you're hearing this episode. So yeah, real talk. Maybe you need to have some fun right now. Well, let me explain to you why fun isn't just a nice to have. It's actually a big necessity for humans to do all the things. So in the fall of 2022, 76% of Americans who were surveyed by the American Psychological Association said that the stress of the pandemic, politics, economy, climate, yada, yada, we all know what the list is, that it had negatively impacted their physical and mental health. 76%. And I remember when this survey came out because all of these big names in positive psychology were kind of talking internally to us as a community about like the APA was asking the wrong questions and it really can't possibly be that bad. But like as a person out in the world, yeah, I believe that probably most people, 76%, 3/4 of people were negatively impacted by the last couple of years. Someone really close to me, I will spare them the embarrassment of telling you who it is. Someone very close to me confided in me that they were raised not to have rampant, silly fun. Specifically, their father used to tell them no buffoonery. And when they would be around people who were just kind of generally silly, their dad would tell them like, it's just buffoonery, and that it wasn't for them. And I feel sad for them. I feel bad for them in a way. Because I was raised in a high silliness family, and we are still a high silliness family, and I feel very good about that. Unfortunately, my mom's second husband was kind of the same. In his mind, there were appropriate adult leisure activities, things like playing poker, watching or playing sports. And then there was silliness that was to be excised as an adult, that it was not for adult people to be silly. Now, if you're a person that already understands fun, and I hope for your sake that you are, this whole episode is just going to be this like confirmation bias for you of the science of fun and why it's good for you and all of that. But if you are someone who is a naysayer, if you were raised to believe that buffoonery is not to be had, that silliness is not foreign to you, you see people acting silly and you roll your eyes. If you think that dressing up for Halloween and loving it is stupid and a waste of time, if you have ever thought, as you see someone belly laughing and being ridiculous, oh, grow up, this episode is for you. You naysayer, humbugger. I hope that you listen to this episode and you take notes. Because if you think that fun isn't important, I got news for you, friend. You are scientifically wrong. Let's talk about why fun is an evolutionary advantage, that it isn't just whatever you do when you're not working. It's so much more than that. And I want to present to you, anti-buffoonery committee, why fun is actually a necessity to be a well-functioning, high-adapting adult. Let's get to it, because fun fact, there's a science of fun. Okay, so the operationalization. Now, if you've never heard me use that word before, operationalization is what is the science definition of something? Because you don't want to be studying something where you've got like 15 different definitions, because then your science can't cross-match, can't cross-reference one another. So the operationalization of fun is the state where people experience playfulness, connection, and flow. Playfulness, connection, and flow. Those are three ingredients in the operationalization and fun. Let's break them down. So playfulness, lightheartedness, funniness, not serious. Essentially, it is the antithesis of just like taking yourself seriously. So this is where that like anti-silliness, anti-buffoonery gets in the way. You need to have a sense of play, of exploration, of goofing off, of having joy, of laughing and haha and like sillies in order for it something to be fun, as opposed to just like being an activity or being a hobby. Because not everything that we do in our leisure time is necessarily specifically fun. And I want to draw that parallel out like right here in the top, so that when we get into the benefits, when we talk about the adaptation, why fun is good for us, that we're very clear. I'm not talking about like if I'm sitting on the couch, doing an embroidery, right? I'm working on a project right now where I'm doing needlepoint. If I'm sitting on the couch doing needlepoint, that's not necessarily fun. That is engagement. It is pleasure. But it's not the same as fun, because fun requires playfulness. Number 2 ingredient, fun requires connection. And I've wondered about this, and we'll talk about it a bit when we dig into this connection bit in the research. But in order for fun in the operationalization, let's say it again, in the operationalization of fun, connectedness is part of it, but it doesn't necessarily mean I have to be with others. It's just the feeling of being connected, of being in community, in cahoots, in cohort. And we'll dig into that a little bit more in a minute. And then this third one, flow. Now, if you've listened to the episodes that we've already done on flow, you already know, but if you haven't, let's invite you in. Flow is a specific cognitive state, first identified by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who was one of the Grand Poobah founders of the field of positive psychology. And flow is a hallmark state in consciousness where we feel time slip away as we become optimally focused and engaged in what we're doing, and we lose our sense of self-awareness. So think about times in your life when you have just had a ton of fun and you're not looking at your watch and you're not thinking about, do I look like a knucklehead? And you're not self-monitoring, and all of that stuff just like parks because you're in the moment, you're doing the thing. That free feeling, that's flow. And so those three things together create the pleasurable experience that we label as fun. And the other really important thing to know about fun before we get into what it does for us is that different people are going to find different things playful. Different people are going to find different things that cause them to feel connected and engaged. And different people experience flow with different activities. So not everyone is going to find fun in the same places. And that's okay. That's normal. That's human. Variety being the spice of life and whatnot. So the answer to start with, when we think about finding fun, to just preview the end of the episode here, is to know yourself, right? Knowing about fun means knowing what you are into, and what will elicit those reactions in you. You're listening to the Better Than Fine podcast. My name is Darlene Marshall, or Wonder Woman, if you're into that. And we're talking today about, why do we need silly fun? Like, why is fun a thing that people actually need and not just like a nice to have? Why does it matter? Well, the first thing I want to dig into has been a buzzword over these last few years. We've done a couple of episodes on this topic, but never from this angle. And that's my fault. I'm going to own that. I could have done it from this angle, but we're going to do it right now, which is that fun makes us more resilient. And again, I mean the actual definition, the operationalization of resilience, which is the ability to manage stress and challenge. A resilient person is someone who the challenges come along and they roll with it. They can handle it. They can take it on. And we all have different thresholds of resilience, right? We're all going to have different levels of challenge, and they can stack up as stress gets to be too much and it whittles away at us. We don't have enough recovery, whatever. But here's the thing about fun. Fun makes us better at managing and handling those challenges. Maybe you have heard me talk before about positive emotion. Positive emotion makes us more adaptive. It opens us up. It makes us more neurologically malleable. It's called the broaden and build theory of positive emotion. Essentially, our negative emotions, quick primer, negative emotions narrow our focus. They lock us in on a problem. That helped our evolutionary ancestors. But for us now, it's not so great, because now we end up hyper-focused on our problems and ruminating and negativity bias just locking us in. Well, fun, positive emotions open us back up. And fun is very good at doing that. So we become more malleable, more adaptive. And that malleability and adaptability, is that the word that I want? Ability to adapt makes us more resilient, because resilient people can roll with challenges. They're not so rigid in their thinking and their reactivity. They can see more solutions. They can be more creative. And if you remember, that second ingredient was connection. In our recipe for connection, the feeling of being connected, that feeling of being opened up and being emotionally adaptable to other people, that makes us better at managing stress too. Because if we don't feel alone, because human beings are pack animals, we need other people, then we feel like we can handle more stress because we're not going it by ourselves. People have our back. And fun doesn't just require connection. Fun fosters connection. When we are playful, when we experience joy with others or humor or fun, we begin to feel a sense of connectivity, of communion. If you have ever heard of mirror neurons, which are neurons in the brain that when we are in proximity and communication, doing stuff with other people who are like us, we start to fire in synchrony and mirror them in our neurons, in our brains. That is bonkers. That is the essence of connection. And people who experience that handle stress and challenge better. We feel more recovered. We feel more adaptive. So literally, we are better at managing stress when we have had fun with somebody. Now, I said in my intro that I was skeptical of this connection idea, because like, wait a second, I can think of times in my life that I have had fun, but I'm like watching a movie or something. You could be alone physically and not be lonely. And I know in my heart and soul that people love me. I'm watching a movie that's aligns with me, that I find funny. Partly I have that feeling of connection because I know those people have my back. Because, wait for it, we have had fun together in the past. We've had shared experiences that were pleasurable, that were goofy, that were silly, that I know I can be open with them. Then I feel that sense of connection. So even when I'm alone, I know that I'm resilient, that I'm connected. It isn't just a nice to have. Like I said, humans are pack animals. This is a need to have neurologically, physiologically, laughter, joy. They discharge the burden of stress from our nervous system. And get this, long-term stress damages the nervous system. Let's dive into that. You're listening to the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Marshall, and we're talking about why we need silly, goofy, yuck it up fun in order to be well. And not just well, in order to be resilient, in order to be adaptive, in order to do whatever it is that you're here to do in your lifetime. When you are stressed for a sustained period of time, it does damage to the body. It does all kinds of physiological damage and challenge, right? Like stress increases your blood pressure. It can cause you to be pre-diabetic. It causes metabolic dysfunction. Okay. But it also, when you are stressed for a sustained period of time, causes the brain to shrink slightly. You prune synapses and you stop creating new synapses, right? So your brain is not as neuroplastic, it's not as dynamic. Sustained stress negatively impacts memory and cognition. High levels of cortisol over sustained period of time will even cause brain cells to die. But positive emotional experiences prime the growth of neurons, the growth of brain cells. It increases adaptability. Literally, having a good time reduces the damage to the brain and the nervous system done by sustained, intense stress. So it's not just resilience as like I can handle it because I've got friends. It is literally physiologically adaptive to have a good time because it rewinds the clock on the damage that stress did. So if you've got a bunch of stuff going on in your life and you're like, I just need it to be Friday so I can go out and have some fun. Good. Maybe just don't drink so much so that you don't undo all of that effect. Okay, so we talked about positive emotion and its adaptation, why it helps us. We've talked about connection. We talked about the way that human beings, being pack animals, when we feel a sense of connection through play, through fun, how that makes us more resilient. It makes us stronger in the face of challenge. It makes us more pleasant to be around. It makes it easier to make new friends. This third ingredient, flow. We have done a bunch of episodes on flow before, but there's this little nuance. In addition to the angle of fun and flow, we haven't talked about this other nuance. And it recently came up with my undergraduate students. I was like, I got to remember the next time I talk about flow to talk about this on the show. So here we go. Flow is not the same as being hypnotized into a stupor, binge watching television, or flicking TikTok on your phone. That's not flow. Not really. Flow involves engagement and focus and performance. You're doing the enjoying. You're like in it, in the experience of the doing, right? When you are binge watching television, when you are flicking TikTok on your phone, you're not really doing. It is the difference between laughing your head off at a stand-up comedian or a movie that you love and like sinking into your couch and mindlessly consuming, totally passive, and just becoming like a human puddle into your furniture. Right? Like those aren't the same experience. One of them is gauged, one of them isn't. And the second one, the like becoming a human puddle, bed rotting or couch rotting, that isn't actually fun. It's actually really to our detriment. And what it's doing is just like zapping up your dopamine into nothingness, right? It's a form of stress to your dopamine and to your brain. It is like a fake fun. I think of it as like when you realize the junk food that you have been eating doesn't even actually taste good, but you still kind of crave it. That's because that junk food has been designed to exploit something in you that causes you to experience craving. And it makes you feel like you can't stop, but it doesn't actually nourish anything in you, that like junk food, garbage food feeling. The flow equivalent is social media binging. That's not flow. But fun puts you into that engaged, upregulated, performative, like, yeah, feeling. That's the kind of flow we're talking about, not junk flow. That's not helpful. Okay, so to recap, fun improves our ability to connect with others. It makes us more neurologically malleable. It undoes the effects of stress in the nervous system. It makes us more resilient. We're better able to handle challenges. I would argue it also increases our baseline well-being just because like it's pleasant, right? Like fun makes your life more enjoyable. I think that's a good thing, right? Like it's not the same as having purpose, but it is important. But I think the argument here might be that, yeah, fun is great and all, but I don't have time for it, or I've been down for a long time and you're asking me to like step up into this like high energy thing. And I don't know, or I haven't had fun in so long, I forgot how. That's a thing. Definitely had periods of my life where, I think about going through my divorce. There's a little pocket there where I wasn't sure I knew what fun was for a while. These things happen. And then we want to know, like, well, how do I step back into the fun? And I think we can look at the 3 ingredients, right? What are activities that help you to feel engaged, that hold your attention? And then who are the people in your life that you can have that kind of, I'm going to pee my pants belly laugh with? And what are some pleasant emotions that are accessible to me that make me feel lighthearted? And if you can think of times in your life or places or people or things that you were doing that connect you to that lighthearted playfulness, people who can be fun, and activities that feel engaging to you, and then go with it. Right? I think of like rock climbing with my sister is fun. Even if I'm in a bad mood, even if we're talking about stuff that's like difficult and going through some stuff, right? Like we still have fun because we're still able to like laugh and enjoy the music and move our bodies. So you could start by incubating on those 3 ingredients, those 3 variables. Like who are the fun people I know? What activities hold my attention? And like, how can I invite playfulness? When have I been playful? What does that look like? Even if you're a person who's like, no, I'm a military veteran and I'm not ever silly, you might still find some places to have fun. But then we get into like, life is busy and difficult and complicated, and making space for fun can feel kind of weird. So let me tell you about 2 strategies that I personally use to ensure that regardless of what else is going on in my life, that fun is part of my lifestyle, because I know it's an adaptive choice, just like exercise or eating vegetables. Like making sure I get fun is an essential ingredient to well-being. And that well-being is what makes me more resilient and adaptive. And that's where I want to live, right? Okay. So strategy number 1, I protect my time. I try to make sure that every week that there is at least an activity and people invited to that activity that I think are likely to be actually fun. And then I block it on my calendar. Now, at least once a quarter, there is a long weekend with my husband where typically we're doing some kind of outdoor adventure because I find those very pleasurable. So that gets blocked and protected. And I view this as protected time, right? Unless it is something really, really important, I'm going to protect this time professionally, personally. Like you got to block it off. At least a few times a month, I spend time with my sisters. Hopefully at least once a week, I get to hang out with one of my besties. And those are all protected times because I know that I need to at least make the space for fun have the chance to exist. Because otherwise it's just not going to happen. My life is too full, right? I think all of us, I don't think I'm special. I think all of us there. I try to do something at least once a day that is a bit silly. So this could be dancing in my office while I'm listening to music. This could be sending memes. This could be, anything that has like a high silliness factor at least once a day. And I'm not dogmatic about it. I don't have a checklist. It's just like an intention that I have set for myself of like, make time for the sillies. Try to make somebody laugh today. And then also, I use the information that I know about positive emotion in the body, that I will be more sensitive to my own positive emotion neurotransmitters. So these are like serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. I'm going to be more likely to experience the positive emotion because I can't fake the silly part, right? I might be able to get flow with connection, but the sillies, that's an emotion. But I can prime the pump. I can set the table for the sillies if I have slept, eaten well, and moved my body and spent time in nature. So I build those things into my life for the most part daily. It's not always daily, but sleep, nutrition, move my body, spend time in nature. Because if I've done those things built into my lifestyle, it's more likely that I'm going to have sensitivity to serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin when the opportunity arises, right? Like when my partner does something silly that engages me, I'm more likely to react with like, ha ha, than to shut them down if I have slept and I'm not hangry and I moved my body today. I'm self-employed. So I have a lot of flexibility in making sure I get enough sleep and building those things into my lifestyle and into my schedule. And I say that because I recognize that is a privilege of flexibility that not everyone has, right? Like the clients that I work with who have shift jobs, they're not staying up late and goofing off and then getting to sleep in the next morning, right? They have structure. But I think we can still carve time to make sure that our biology is supporting our intention, right? That we are setting ourselves up with the layup of physiology supporting playful. Because it's easier to have fun when you are not tired and undernourished and otherwise grumpy. And if you don't believe me, I'm sure that you have been around a toddler who missed their nap and then flips out later on while they're still trying to play, right? Like we've all been around that. I'm a firm believer. Humans are just toddlers with better self-regulation, right? Like us as adults, we are big toddlers. We have the same needs. We just have a prefrontal cortex that allows us to regulate most of the time. And when you get hangry, it's because that's failing. So we need food, we need naps, we need cuddles, and we need to play and explore because that is how we learn about what is most adaptive in our environment. And joy is a highly adaptive, positive emotion. And fortunately for all the you naysayers, now we have the research to prove it. And so if you are someone who is skeptical about fun, I hope that you have heard some value in this because most of the people I hear who are really skeptical about being silly and playful and like you think that we're all just like goofing off over here, us toxically positive, happy people. Typically those people I find are very serious because they think that they have to be in order to be resilient, right? They got to be tough. And that's not necessarily resilience, right? To me, as a person who pulls my resilience from connection and community and vulnerability and being highly adaptive, one of my personal internal claims to fame is my therapist once told me I'm the most capable person that she had ever met. Put that on my tombstone. I think that capability comes from adaptability. And that adaptability comes from playfulness, from malleability that comes from positive emotion. So that's my argument to you, naysayers, humbug, Scrooge people. Put on your Halloween costume and go have a good time. Of course, I would love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to, you can send me an email. It's info@darlene.coach about this and any episode and anything else that you would like to ask or suggest. My Instagram is also darlene.coach, and you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Darlene Marshall. If you're a fan of the show, I hope that you have already subscribed, but if you haven't, go ahead and do it. Thank you to everyone who's been leaving us a review. We appreciate you so, so very much. Happy Halloween, my friends. Take good care of yourselves and be well.